That's not, I mean, so.
That all.
I was, I typically.
Okay.
There's another one. Yeah, but there's another one over here, that way you want to.
Okay, yeah. Sure. Thank you. So I can't see the people that are online. And I want to make sure they can hear us. Okay.
Some devices you want to choose are right there. So just make sure it's the ones that selected.
Okay. So microphone is on. I don't have the camera on because it's just going to show that screen. It looks like. Is that not true?
Is that all you want to see, or do you want to?
Well, I can't see them. I'd like to see the people. Though maybe they've got their cameras turned off. I don't know. If you're listening from Zoom, can you let us know if you can hear me or not?
Yes.
Thumbs up, so they can. Okay, cool. Unfortunately, the way this is set up, I can't see you. But please feel free to interrupt or something like that if you want to share something.
Sorry, Lord,
As long as you're sharing, you're not gonna be able to see them, but once you stop sharing, you should see.
Then I'll see.
I just need to interrupt because we're getting, we've gotten a couple messages from a Teams meeting. This is on Zoom.
This is Zoom,
Zoom.
so I
I
didn't.
didn't check email. I said send them the Zoom link.
I'll
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't know we were doing any like remote, so sorry about the delay in all of this. It was, getting things set up, but I really appreciate all of you joining us online or in person to learn a little bit more about what's been happening with CLP, where we're going, and more importantly, so I can hear from you about what your needs are and think about how CLP can help you.
Hello, do you know what's going on? with
Just
the meeting?
to
Are we supposed to be in another place?
give you a little bit of background, primary goals for the collaborative language program is really always been since 1998 to diversify and increase language offering around the state. That's the primary goal. And we do this in many ways. And more recently, more recently, we've been focusing also on enrollments and coming up with ways to keep students for longer. And in doing that, we've gotten into some credentialing of students, and we've discovered in doing so, students realize, oh, I'm just on the cusp of this next level. So then they end up taking yet another class so that they can level up. The students that we're teaching today, and I'm going to guess it's similar here, they're not all trying to become language educators. They're going out into whatever career eventually, or grad school, or whatever it is. And there isn't room in their schedules to always take languages, so we have to give them more incentives to do that, and that's what the credentialing part has been doing for us. Specific goals for today, I want to dispel any misconceptions that you might have. CLP has evolved over time. I mean, it's been 26 years, so I hope we've evolved over time. Even the technology has evolved over time and so forth. So what you might think that you know about CLP could have changed, and I want to make sure that we can talk about any of those things that have brought you concern. Sort of clarify the direction that CLP is going. And the hope ultimately is to be able to work collaboratively with all of you with whatever your needs may be. So I'm here to listen and to respond to questions that you have, as well as bring back to our board and to my co-director the concerns that are out there to make sure that we're working on moving in a direction that's helpful to all of the campuses, not just the few that have been participating for a long time. And that's part of our change and evolution and so forth. To give you a little bit of background.
Hello, everyone. I hear the
language
meeting is
courses,
in Zoom,
since the beginning.
but I don't know where the Zoom link is. So I don't even know if you guys are still
We're,
here.
Very
But
proficiency
if
oriented.
somebody can send me the Zoom link, that'd be great.
And tied into that is this credentialing piece, because we're using the stamp 4S test, which is done by Avant, so it's a nationally recognized test to test all of our students. So that, aligns with the actual proficiency scales and so forth. And then the other piece of it, since the beginning, is building community so that students, even if they're not physically in the same location, still have that community feel that you get in your physical classrooms. So we're very in tune to all of those pieces. We have already pretty much aligned the Russian, Chinese, and Japanese textbooks within our group. And that was somewhat accidental, that it worked out that way. But, and I believe here, the integrated Chinese is the Chinese text too. I don't know what you're using for Japanese and Russian. And then we just started talking about sort of aligning the French and German. That focus has been towards the first 4 semesters so that our students can transfer between any origination site or sending site or transfer campuses and still sort of be in line for whatever the next piece is. So with the French and German, we're looking at moving to OER for that. And the other ones may move to OER at some point too, just because textbooks are so expensive. They really kind of priced the average student out of the market. Oh, thank you for noticing that. So that's kind of the gist of how we're going about making sure that everybody's getting a similar experience and that there can be transition regardless of what campus they're on. Anita.
So particularly good for transfer students too, not just.
Correct. Correct. So yes, it works across the board.
That's often a problem. And placement tests don't really help with that.
Exactly. And with German right now, because I know you guys just recently did your curriculum, I'm having them look at the text that you've been using for your first 4 semesters because it's inexpensive for first 4 semesters. So it's close enough to being an OER type material that I think that we'll probably be basing as we move forward any redesign on what's in there. That's a working group that's going to get working very soon. The notice for the French group already went out, I think, yesterday. So we're kind of starting to move that way and hoping to continue to get feedback from you guys. Because I know that some of our students land here. They might start with us and then they land here. Some of them land in Madison and so forth. So we are very conscious about that. Just a few minutes to talk about technology. Everybody uses Canvas, which if I had a better word, I would use it, but it was kind of a godsend to our program because for the first time, students didn't need to have a different login on each campus that they were taking a class from. They used their standard login, whatever they would have for UWM, and the CLP courses show up along with all of the other courses. The only difference is when they click on the CLP course, instead of having the UWM logo in the upper left, they have a UW system logo. That's the only difference. But to them, it's no change. So that's really helpful. These are some of the technologies that we have integrated directly into Canvas. So you get all the analytics for them. I don't know how many of you are users of Padlet. That one's been around for quite a while. And extempore is one of the ones that we adopted pre-COVID. It was the first and still only application that allows you to do asynchronous spontaneous communication. Which for our courses are, the majority of them are flipped. And what I mean by that is they'll have a certain number of asynchronous days with a certain number of synchronous days, varies based on the instructor. But those asynchronous days, the students are doing some kind of learning and demonstrating their learning. This has allowed us to meet the needs of our students better in terms of their schedules because they don't have to free up 4 days in a row or 5 days in a row for a language class. And extempore is one of the ways that we can get lots of speaking from them that's spontaneous. And I know, were you the one that called
I did.
extempore? Yes.
One person. So
Yes, so there's been a contact already from this campus. When I found that out, I contacted the CEO, who I've now become friends with, and he made sure that everybody knew what was going on. Sean was the name of the guy, I believe, and he was a little bit newer to the company, and so he was unaware of our use of it, but anyway. And then H5P, I know you've all been available here. We have it integrated in Canvas, so you get the analytics from it. I think you guys are you still using the free version of it? Is that correct? Yeah. So we have the paid version. It's integrated into Canvas, and it also provides you with some activity types that you don't get anymore in the free version, and that includes ways to create digital lessons. So I can show you some of those. If you're interested, I can, show you some examples.
I think CEDO got a couple of pilot accounts for H5P, so they can be, used in Canvas. So we
Okay.
integrated a couple of years ago, and then they've been paying for it, so we just, keep using it.
Okay.
There's some message in the chat, I don't know if it's older.
Let's see. Thank you for watching this because I don't have the screen behind me to see. Russian is using the book Golosa. Okay, that's the same one as us, I believe.
No, that's not this.
So, so that aligns really well. Thanks, Megan, for letting us know that. So, I can show you examples. I can have you tell me more about what your needs are. Which direction are you ready to go right now?
That's a question that's not quite,
Yeah,
do high school students ever participate?
yes.
And how does that work?
So it depends on the class. And the reason I say that is because we still have some instructors who are using the physical classrooms, the ITV environment where you connect classroom to classroom. And in those cases, if they won't allow for a student to come in on a laptop, then we can't have secondary students participating simply because they typically can't get from their high school to the university and back during the day. More and more, our instructors have moved either to fully online, where they're using something called InSpace, which I can also talk about. So that's one way of doing it, and then everybody's coming in on their laptops. InSpace is kind of special. It's not like Zoom, it's a whole lot better. It's much more classroom-like. Or if they're doing the physical classrooms and they're willing to do high flex, they will let students from a high school, for example, use their laptops and zoom into the classroom. I've observed those classes. I would say from a teaching perspective, they're the most complicated to teach if you're looking at trying to give everybody the same kind of attention. And I would also say from a student perspective, they miss a lot if they're not in the same environment as everybody else. And one of the reasons we're starting to move more and more towards InSpace for our courses, all of our courses, is to get everybody on the same platform and having the exact same experience. Because even when you connect two classrooms together, one classroom that doesn't have a teacher in it is not feeling the same thing as the classroom that does have the instructor in it. So we want everybody to have that same experience, and we also will be looking at how do these different models impact, if at all, proficiency level gains that our students get to. And that's where some of the Avant tests will come in too. So we're hoping to be able to see for sure, but sitting in those environments, I can feel that there's a difference. I also have been taking German from UW-La Crosse. I've done 4 different semesters now. I think I started in the 2nd semester and now I'm in a 400 level class. And it's not the same being the one who's zooming in to another classroom. Parent small group activities are not the same. So it always helps if there's somebody else who's like me and then we can pair up, but that doesn't always happen. As you get to the upper levels and you have smaller classes, it's also kind of awkward to have these 2 huge, technology enriched classrooms connected to each other, and then the people are really small and it's kind of messy. So that's where InSpace comes in. I know some of you experienced InSpace through our summit. Are you curious to see a little bit more what InSpace is, what I'm talking about? Because I have some images I can show you and talk about what's going on that make it different from Zoom. It was a game changer. Whoops. I too quickly back to this. InSpace was a game changer because, so this is an example, when the people are already in InSpace, and unfortunately I can't show you a live video because you would see the people's names and I didn't ask permission, so I have to show it this way. This is a background that was created. They're super easy to create. And the people who are in the session can move themselves to answer the question. Just like you might say, okay, everybody stand up. If you like cats better, go over here. If you like dogs better, go over there. Any of those kind of things that can happen very easily. And here, the students have a lot of autonomy because they can move themselves around. This is what breakout groups can look like. And when you're in breakout groups, so you can move yourself. You could also think of this as stationed activities, which is kind of what's going on here because there's 5 different activities and people could move themselves to whichever activity they wanted. This one, the recipe writing and discussion one, and the eating habits one, that's a shared Google Doc. You can only see it if you're actually in that room.
I have a question. May I ask a
Not only when you're
question?
in that room, you can see it, but you can edit it. So you can
May I
physically
ask
edit
a
on it.
question? Hello?
Number 5, the whiteboard
Hello?
one, that is using a whiteboard called Miro.
Right.
And it allows for, sticky notes and any kind of activity that you would have students walking around a room and doing. You can kind of do.
So that's one that for Jamboard, they're suggesting you go to that one.
Okay, yeah, and it's we got
There's several options. Would you recommend that?
yes, yeah, it has a lot of different templates already made that you can use or adapt to things. It's pretty easy to use, and it's built directly, or it's connected directly into InSpace, so you can automatically, if you've used it in the past, it'll show all of the whiteboards you've created from before. So it's just a really nice tool.
Are you taking,
You can kind of
excuse me,
see
are
in
you,
the
hello?
upper
Hello? Are you taking
in the
questions?
upper corner, there's some
Hello?
numbers 4 and 5. That's also
Hello?
a shared screen by the instructor. So the instructor can share content, 5 different kinds of content at the same time in different locations, so that you can do different kinds of activities with their students. You can't do that in Zoom, right? So the flexibility is significantly more classroom.
I ask a question.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay,
Hello?
let's see what we have. Okay.
Hello?
Someone has a question, they cannot hear you, I think.
No,
Hi, yes, of course you can ask a question.
no, you cannot
Feel
hear
free
me.
to use your mic. Oh, we can't hear you. Okay, so type your question. No? I don't know.
Andrew, did you hear they want you to type the question?
You're not
Yeah, that's
muted.
fine.
Why don't you type it?
Hang on a
You can
second.
tell me and I'll type it for you.
It's fine, it's fine. It's not that important.
Oh, we're going to room sound now. Give us a second. You want to try and talk again?
Or, it's fine. Hello, can you hear me?
I think I hear you faintly.
Well, if my microphone's up full, it must be on your end.
No.
Okay, it's fine.
Mm.
Never mind.
If you're on the online audio.
We're getting the tech person.
Yeah.
So hold on to your question. Hopefully, we can figure out why we're not hearing you.
Hear that?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to stop sharing. I think. We gotta get to the devices.
Okay.
Try to mute you, so-
Okay, now try and speak to us and maybe we'll hear you.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Check. Is it working?
Yep, it is. Thank you.
Good, good. That's fine. It might be important, since this is a sort of a hybrid meeting to hear people. So I could have typed it, but I think it's important to have the things working.
No, I prefer voice.
Yeah, Right. And I don't like texting and email for that purpose, So I wasn't in the first 6 or 7 minutes because the modality changed. So I was on 2 devices. So I was present, but in the non-Zoom meeting. So, but thanks for changing to Zoom, which I prefer in any case. But so I might not have heard this, but what I wanted to know is this the software that our associate dean Jason helpfully brought to our chairs meeting? Is this the software that he experienced in going to Madison or some meeting that he recommended as a very good piece of software for our language programs?
Yes.
Okay. He says yes, he's in it right now.
Okay, well, that's important because there have been positive and negative reactions to it. I've heard more positive reactions than negative, and so I just wanted to know if this is the same thing and not another product. So
Yeah, no, this would be the same thing. So let me give you a little history on how we got to InSpace. It was somewhat accidental. I was in a different webinar and I posed a question, and somebody that was also in that webinar contacted me and said, hey, can I ask you a little bit more about the question you were asking? I answered his question, and then he was like, would you be interested in seeing this product? And I sort of, thought about it, and I'm like, well, it never hurts to look at something, but I'm not buying right now because I don't have any money. And that's how I went into it.
yes,
And I saw what it did, and I was like, oh my God, this is a game changer. This is what we need to be able to use for our language courses so that we can have that communicative interaction that we always look for. Another piece of this that I didn't mention is it has an audio proximity feature, so that when you're closer together, you hear each other, just like when you're in a classroom. And
that's
if
very
you're
helpful.
further away, you don't hear the people. What was that?
Yeah, that's very helpful. If there's one, that's extremely helpful, actually. It's more like a classroom setting. So
Yeah.
if you could address at some point your presentation, it's not necessarily a critique I share, but the idea that it's too busy. So if during this presentation you can address the question of, can you make it a little less busy for those that don't want it quite so busy? If you could address that in your presentation somehow, so that you can center on more traditional seeing people's faces without all the busy work. I don't know exactly why a few people don't like it, but as much. So if you could address that at some point, it would be helpful. And that's really the only other question I had.
Okay. Yeah, I'll actually address that right now since we're talking about InSpace. So first off, you have a number of different views you can use. You have a classroom view, which basically would have everybody's head around a presentation that you would put up. You have a discussion view, and you can have as many or as few discussion sections as you want, I think up to 10, maybe. So you could just have one big discussion room. When you're in that discussion space, so imagine, and actually even in these discussion spaces that you see on the screen, if you look at the upper right corner of any of these boxes, there's like a two-way arrow. If you click on that, then that discussion space takes up the whole screen for you. So you're able to see very clearly everybody that's in your group, as well as the content.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
So, I mean, the idea of the busy, it's very good for listening skills, because you can have conversations, proximity is beautiful. You can have more people, there's interference is acceptable, just like in a room. Now, visually, the idea of the busy is really visual for someone who's visually impaired, challenge in that sense. It is a very difficult. I mean, if you're sharing so many stories, how?
Yes,
how
I'm
you-
so glad you brought that up, and especially the idea of somebody with vision impairment. We had a student that was in one of our lacrosse classes, and on Zoom during the pandemic, it was horrible for her because she couldn't see anything and she didn't know which discussion group to go to because the pop-ups on the screen, she couldn't see them. One of the features that I love about InSpace is you can, without anybody else knowing, attach a student to another student that will take them to the room they're supposed to go to. And you can use your trackpad on your computer to make things larger or smaller as you need. So that vision impaired student was so happy to get into InSpace and actually be able to participate more than she could in Zoom, simply because of the accessibility features that this offers to do that. So I 100% hear the challenges that you're talking about, and I think this solved it much better than Zoom.
Well, just very briefly, just repeat, because I think Megan can talk to that much better.
Sure. So this is a software that we're using instead of Zoom for synchronous online meetings. And we had a vision impaired student at lacrosse who could not handle Zoom because they didn't know where to go, they couldn't see anything, etc. This particular software InSpace allows the instructor to attach a student to another student that brings them into the space where they need to be. And when you're in that space, you can use the trackpad on your computer to make things bigger or smaller so that those who are visually impaired can actually get it to what they need it to be.
So it's a buddy system.
Yeah, yep.
I do have to say that Zoom is not very accessible for those with visual impairments. So,
Correct.
in general, Teams is much better, but Zoom is really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So we found much more success with this and much more happiness from our students with this because of the accessibility
As
features.
well, how to assign those to
What's that? You want to try again? Whoever it was online that was speaking?
Maybe it was fast.
I saw a microphone go on. I think someone had something on the background.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Anita.
isn't space pretty responsive to kinds of needs and are they, is it?
Oh, super
So
responsive.
they're evolving and trying to be more
Yeah.
accessible? or-
Yeah, they're very focused on that. So how they came to be was during the pandemic, a computer science instructor was very frustrated by Zoom and what it wasn't allowing her to do in her classroom. She developed this company and started this application. And whenever we've had questions, within minutes, we're getting a response, either try this and or thanks for letting us know, we'll work on that right now, and then within 15 minutes to a half hour, whatever was the bug got fixed. We don't have very many of those, but it has happened, just like with any software.
Are any of the big campuses using them?
Right now, the CLP program is the only one that's using them, but a lot of the campuses have now seen it because we're spread out. At what point it would be a system-wide adoption, I don't know.
Other systems. Michigan.
Oh, yeah, yes, that there are a number of them. So if you go onto the InSpace website, they have a list of universities that they're working with, yes.
So what does it take for the system to adopt?
Well, I'll tell you that, one thing that we're ahead on is that we've already gotten legal to look at it. Because we couldn't adopt it if it hadn't gone through legal and all of those steps. So some of that's out of the way. But it becomes a, question of, I guess, system-wide decisions and finances and whatever. With the pandemic, they moved to Zoom because they realized that Teams or whatever else they had, some campuses, it was kind of like the learning management systems where some campuses were on D2L and others were on WebCT or Blackboard or whatever. That's kind of how things were in system. There were WebCT people, there were Teams people, there were Google people, and they decided with the pandemic, everybody's just going to use Zoom for classroom because they needed to go to one thing that would be across the board. That's relatively recent. So how soon as a system they're going to look at something like this, I don't know. And it probably depends on how many campuses show interest in wanting it adopted for their campus. I mean,
What's the price point?
What's that?
What's the price point compared to, say, Zoom, which our campus adopted, albeit late? They had gone to Teams, which I found problematic for entry, and a lot of people did. It's quite a mess, actually. But I'd been on Zoom before, and that worked very well, albeit it had problems like Meg had suggested and so on. But it was much preferable and much more consistent. But what's the price point difference? Like if our campus has already has a contract of some sort of contract with Zoom when they went to it, and I don't know how that all works. I mean, I think we're going out to Teams. So what's the price point difference?
So I don't know the answer to that. I only know what we have paid based on the number of instructors that we have. I know that they would, if we were going to a system-wide adoption, there would be a certain level of discount based on the number of users that we're talking about. And I don't know what it is for Zoom either. Zoom was a system-wide adoption, I think. I don't know that each campus is paying independently for it, but I could be wrong about that. I don't know how that's handled.
Is there an integration cost for this?
Is there what?
Integration cost.
For this? Well, what part of our price includes integration into Canvas, 100%. So the students just click on it on the side, single sign on, all of that. And that's part of the fee that we paid, but we only paid it for CLP. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's ask, what did you pay CLP?
So we paid $10,000 just for our group. So that
Give you a
comes
certain number of
out to
users?
about $1,000 an instructor per year. So yeah, that's about what it comes down to. Yeah, Nita.
So, and then this is just something that would probably help if would be any data about retention of students and student success compared to, say, a course delivered on Zoom. I wonder if in other systems or universities that they collect any data on that.
I haven't looked at that, but I would be more than happy to see if I can get some research on that. We haven't had it long enough to be able to do any kind of research on attrition, but we do have statements from students saying how much they like it better than Zoom. Because we
How-
are
how
collecting
long
that
is-
in surveys.
How long have you had?
This is our second year, or, yeah, it's either our second year or we're a year and a half in. I think, yeah, it might be a year and a half in right now. Megan, is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. So I know, I was a little late because I was one of the people stuck in the Teams room, but no, because I got this forwarded.
Yeah, no, that, I
Um,
didn't know about any of that until
no.
I arrived either,
Well,
so
but-
it's all good.
Yeah, and so Russian is very interested in kind of participating and having students from high school. We have one that's coming in the fall from Shorewood High School, but if we were to do this, you said it works better to everyone to be online.
Mhm.
Since we usually only have one section of first year Russian, would we have a second section for these students, or then would we have to shift our instruction completely online?
That's a really good question. And what I'd like to say is that I would love to work with you on having more than one section of Russian.
I would love to.
That's what I would like to see. So, if you're having like one student coming in on a laptop, then you kind of have to use Zoom because Zoom is gonna be your classroom-based
Right.
option.
Mhm.
This is not meant to be used as in a high flex kind of situation.
Well, can you extend that a bit? Because like, for instance, in ancient Greek, I have students that Zoom in from California, the Arctic,
Right?
and that integrates very well. But to be honest, our LRC, Learning Resource Center, has excellent, smart boards, cameras set up in the classroom. I mean, really, couldn't this couldn't do that? Couldn't you just use that same technology and boom?
Yeah, let me explain what's happening and why that is, okay? So when you have a physical classroom and you have students coming in independently, you're all connecting into a place in the cloud. Think of a cloud named Zoom, okay? And your classroom's connecting to that and the students are connecting into that.
Sure.
Okay? In the case of InSpace, if for everybody in your physical classroom to also be interacting directly with the students that are on their laptops and InSpace,
Right.
you would get a lot of feedback because everybody would have their mics on next to each other.
Yeah.
And it becomes problematic because this is not designed where it's going into the cloud and then your classroom goes into the cloud like Zoom does.
Well, and I think you're right, it is problematic, because I've had that before, where some of the people are physically in the classroom, and then I had one student who's permanently online, and
Mhm.
it's really difficult for group work for her, because she was always by herself. Sometimes she couldn't hear us if there was a student way in the back who we saw. So, yeah, I think you're right, it makes sense to have it either completely online in something like InSpace or in the classroom, the blend.
Yeah,
blended one.
the high flex, I think is the, it's better than nothing. I'm just gonna say that, it's
Enough.
better than nothing, right? And currently I'm in a high flex situation for a German class I'm taking through lacrosse. What she ends up doing is she brings her laptop in. So she's got the classroom connected. And I'm calling into Zoom through the classroom, and then she's got this laptop that's connected. And whenever it's time for pair or small group work, she mutes the mic that's the classroom one, carries her laptop over to a pair or group, and I work with them unmuting that mic, and then they have to mute it again, and then she goes back, so there's it can be done.
Yeah.
It's just not as good.
Right.
You know what I'm hearing here is an individual trying to do things. Now, I would really recommend having professionals, if this isn't, say, all of us aren't experts in every area, I certainly am not. What I've found is, like, our LRC has a couple of technicians, along with Mingyu, who actually have figured out ways to do things that I would have never thought. And now, so my question to you is, have you had people whose expertise is in that area actually try to play around with this to get a model that might work much better, and what's needed in the classroom, what sort of miking, what sort of videos, rather than, I never carry laptop there because the classroom's already set up with various types of optics and various types of microphone possibilities. So I'm just wondering, have you put that through that sort of professionally rigorous system like we have in our LRC to see what the experts could think up as a fix for this sort of, let's say, problem?
Yes, and I'm gonna give you a little background that I hadn't given all of you. I was a classroom Spanish instructor. And I always used a lot of technology, and I became a technology integration specialist in languages, working for UW-Madison. And I did that for a number of years before this position opened up in 1998. So I have been very involved in the language technology field, and our program itself has evolved as the technology has evolved in terms of doing the best that we can with what we have to work with. I mean, you and I have known each other for, I don't know, decades at this point, and have worked closely together on a lot of these things and the changes. So I'm kind of that person because I speak both languages. So
That's helpful. It sounds to me then, since a lot of us need to also keep, it's a very important component to my mind, using like Zoom so that you can have people on campus and off campus with the dwindling number of registrants. Although, to be honest, our registrations for languages are above LNS general registration, just to be clear on that, percentile wise. But I think generally speaking, in order to get as much of an audience as we can, what I'm seeing here so far is that we would still have to keep Zoom for many of our classes. And this is an answer for many of our classes too. Is that what I'm hearing then?
yes, I think. So
But we don't want to lose the ability to have one class. Let's say you're only going to have 16 students,
that's
and 8 of those are going to be doing a hybridity. They're going to be zooming in from different places, and then the other 8, let's say, or 9, they want to be on campus or they want to use this. So I'm seeing now that there's some variation in how you do your classes. That what I'm hearing is this isn't an answer for the sort of hybrid model that we've had to use during COVID to allow in one class, because we don't necessarily have enough instructional capacity or enough students to get, say we have 2 classes, we don't have that third, and we don't have the money to offer another instructor these days. So what I'm hearing is this isn't the answer to all hybridity, for instance. Not to be negative, but I'm just thinking practically from a financial point of view.
So let's back up one small step, and that is that the collaborative language program does not dictate what model, what format, or anything of what you teach. Okay, how you want to teach. We have 4 different models running right now. What I mean by that is different amounts of synchronous and asynchronous time based on what the instructors feel is the best for their students and retention and all of those kinds of things. They take those factors in, and my job is to support them in whatever they choose. And so I wouldn't dictate to you, you must use InSpace. We are offering it as an option, and I'll tell you why why we're tending to push in that direction is because it allows us, when you do classroom to classroom, there's a limited number of classrooms you want to connect to before it starts to get really complicated and messy and a lot of extra work and a lot of extra stress trying to coordinate all of those different places, right?
Yes.
If you're using a platform like InSpace where everybody's coming in from their laptop, it doesn't matter where they are. So we can take our courses and we can offer them to more students in more places. And so we can actually grow enrollments in courses simply by having it offered in more places.
Do you have a ceiling to the town
A ceiling for,
or class?
oh yeah, 25 is our maximum.
Still work with in space?
Yeah,
Or
Yep.
that's kind of probably pushing it.
So yes and no. One of the other things that CLP does is we have what's called facilitators. If you have 7 or more students in an online environment like this, with our new funding model, CLP puts $1,000 towards a native speaking facilitator who assists in the classroom with you. So let's say you've got, 5 different breakout rooms. You can be in one breakout room, your facilitator can be in another breakout room, hearing what's going on, and you kind of move around. So you have kind of like a classroom assistant helping you to support all of those students. The only real requirement of a facilitator is that they speak the target language relatively fluently, if not fluently. So they are your sort of teaching assistant, and you tell them what you want them to do, and that's what they can do to help support you in the classroom and support the larger numbers of students.
Excuse me, are there progress tracking tools that the students can check to monitor their proficiency?
Yeah, so that would go back to some of these other technologies that I mentioned earlier. So H5P, this is a technology where if you see on the screen the little bubbles at the bottom, each one of those would represent an interaction where a student is going to answer a question. And the analytics from that goes to the gradebook and gives immediate feedback to the students. So that's one. And then we also have Extempore, which is the speaking app. It does more than speaking, but again, this is something where students can, this is the instructor screen setting up what questions look like. You can put time limits on them or not, and get speaking assessments from your students there as formative assessments. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
There may be, I don't know if there is a question in chat, but I want to say a couple things.
Sure.
I think like with InSpace, the scalability is kind of really the key. I taught through ITV where you connect classrooms. And you're absolutely right. You could connect, I think it connected at most 2, maybe there was a 3rd, but then
It starts to get really cumbersome. Yeah.
But with InSpace, there is not that hierarchy, there's not that difference in experience, and you can have 1 to 2 people per campus to, really grow into a class of 20 to 25, and then and we're all receiving the same, experience. And that is, again, I agree with you on the game changer thing. And the only other sort of note I'll make about that is, I don't know if you're taking it with Shelley, but Shelley Hay, who was at Cross German instructor, was also at this summit that Warren put up for French and German. I talked to her, I know her personally, she's an amazing instructor, and she sort of said, listen, when I first heard about this, I wasn't sure, but she quickly discovered to love InSpace. And so, I mean, one of the things that folks are interested in hearing from someone who's worked with this, like their experience, I already reached out to her and said, hey, would you mind talking to us about it? Because I know there are concerns, it's new, I've never talked with it, I don't know. What it would be like, she would be willing to, talk to us and answer questions. So we can think about setting that up. Hear from an instructor. I know you are an instructor, but it's always.
No, 100%, 100%.
So there was that scalability, and I think the other point about technology, listen, when you have the 5 screen on there and the 5 open documents, I don't know if I'm doing that, to be perfectly honest.
And you don't have to.
Because it's a lot. However, like there are really basic kind of things that you can do with InSpace as well. Like you don't need to use all the bells and whistles.
Correct.
You can also use it to present in a really effective way where everyone kind of sees each other, and then the proximity audio is been for me what I'm most kind of excited about, because it does recreate in a sense that classroom experience where you can hear right? In our partners, we can hear each other, but we don't need to not be sort of wondering what's going on over there, what are they doing, but we kind of see each other, we have that visual, kind of, at least just in terms of, circles. And there are, what you did for us too, is you just have little squares on a screen. You know, group one is there, group two, it doesn't need to be
Right.
Google document with mural boards and.
Right. The reason it was built that way was so that people could get an idea of all the different kinds of things that could be shared,
Yeah.
but you're right.
Yeah, but
You
the
would-
scalability
Yeah.
works both ways. in
100%.
terms of, like, multiple people, but also how technology works. And again, it's going to be a training process for instructors, how it's done well,
Yes.
what it does not do well. So there's that, and then the second thing I will say, extempore, yes, I reached out because I wanted to hear about this. And it's, you know, so what I found out is that, you know, you can do a prompt that's a text prompt, that's a video prompt, that's an audio only prompt. They can have, you can go anywhere from low stakes, which just repeat practices often is 1 to high stakes assessment, listen once, you have 10 seconds to record. Right, but so again, it's scalable. It doesn't have to be one thing or the other. It really does. It is though expensive. It's like $15 a person. That's what I heard it is.
For extemporary,
For extemporary,
that's true.
yes.
And until you get to certain capacity. So the more students you have, the cheaper it gets. Just like the stamp assessments. The more students we have that are gonna take it, the less expensive it is per test. Anita.
Just to add on to, so Shelley is very generous.
Yeah.
She's meeting with me next week.
Yeah.
She's gonna talk to me about working with AI, and she's also really
Mhm.
good at that. So I think that if that's something that we could
Yeah.
maybe put in funding for the NRC or something.
Yeah.
Even though she's teaching German, it's not technically on the list, but we affect all of the other languages. And maybe that would be great to have some, Shelley comes, she might talk in 2 talks, but we'd also talk
Yeah.
about other talented instructors out there that could come in. Because I think it's really nice to see really a language person that's using it. And I also have a sense from having gone through the Zoom and all those things, that learning curve that we did in the pandemic was very, very steep.
Yeah.
But this seems to me like a much
Yeah.
easier learning curve. You can come in, you can start using it at a basic level pretty quickly. And then over time, you add in and, you know, you see more models and then you borrow and, you know, I think that's great. And if you have all this collaborative, someone
And-
might give you their templates. Or give
Right,
you
and
their-
I wanna highlight that, because one of the things that CLP has been able to create is a strong community of language educators around the state. There are a number of them who are the only Russian instructor on their campus, or the only Chinese instructor on their campus, and things like that. And you probably, some of you know how that feels. And having other language instructors that are going through the same thing, and in fact, this afternoon, we're having an instructor share meeting. And it'll be in InSpace. We do that on a regular basis. So we've created sort of this, it's almost like a virtual language department of all the people that are teaching in CLP. Yeah.
I do just have a practical question, because I'm new to CLP and I
Right.
know Russian really wants to investigate this, but how do we get students? Because I know we don't have many here. I think I have like 13 students in first year Russian, even fewer in the other ones. So how do we attract these students through CLP to take Russian?
Okay, so the courses would list in your regular course listings, course search. One of the things that we are doing this semester, and it should be happening really soon, I pushed out some marketing materials, and on the other campuses, we're going to be doing a social media takeover of marketing languages and taking languages, and sign up now and go to your registration and, you know, find out what ones are available on your campus and all of that. So I do that to the extent the campuses let me. But a lot of it has been word of mouth over the years, because we haven't done the social media push, where a student hears, like, one of our Japanese instructor, Magara Maeda, who's at River Falls, has an extraordinary following at Stevens Point. And people have just heard that she's a good instructor and they're really enjoying Japanese. So people start taking the class. So a lot of it is also the student word of mouth.
So the students though wouldn't be from UWM, they'd be from a different university.
So every university that is offering a CLP course has whatever avenues they would advertise on their local campus. So if you have, well, I think today Stevens Point is having their course fair or something where that's something that they do, where they highlight all of the courses in the College of Letters and Science. So different campuses do things differently. And the CLP courses are included along with all the other language courses.
But we can get students from other universities, because right now,
Yes.
there's no one here wanting to take Russian, so in order for us to survive, we need to get students from other campuses.
Right, and those other campuses would do the advertising.
Okay.
For their local, so each campus, whatever courses they're offering, wherever it's coming from, it doesn't matter. Whatever courses are available in their course catalog, those are the ones that they advertise on their campuses.
Okay, so our classes would be.
They would be advertised elsewhere.
Okay.
Yep.
The course catalog doesn't say it's CLP, right? It just shows up as an online course.
So the course catalog, you're right, it's not gonna say, but when they go to sign up for a course, that's where it usually says modality. And that's where they would see if it's, an online or a high flex or a hybrid or any of that. Because that can also change. You might be offering some local, and Russian's a perfect example. I mean, what if you offered a Russian 101 course and another campus also offered one to you? Now you've got two possible slots that students could sign up for. So you might ultimately have more students taking Russian than having one slot that students couldn't go
And
to.
we would get the enrollment numbers, even. if they-
Exactly. Yes, the tuition dollars stay on your campus. Jason.
We would get the tuition dollars when our students enroll on another campus, from another campus.
You would not get their tuition dollars. You only get your
So
own
in
tuition
Megan's
dollars.
First example, right, when the student from Stevens Point enrolls in Megan's Russian class, we get. nothing.
Correct. But
Oh, well,
assuming that class also has students from here in
Right.
it.
Yep.
And
Depends
then
on-
maybe lacrosse is sending a Russian class to this campus at, well, what time? Let's just for sake of your class, is it?
2:30 to 3:45.
Okay. And maybe lacrosse offers one here also at 11 o'clock. And so you could have students that enroll in the 11 o'clock because that fits in their time, in their schedule, as well as the ones that you have in your section in the afternoon. And you get all of those. You get the tuition dollars from both of those then. You see what I mean?
But our students only, so like I said.
Correct.
Students
Correct.
wanting to take my class.
Correct.
Okay,
But
Correct.
a UWM student taking a class from the Stevens Point instructor.
we get a.
tuition too.
Right.
And that's-
And that instructor doesn't get paid by us.
Correct.
So there's that. But
Correct.
I also think this, you're talking about, high school students
Yeah.
earlier. And I think that there are a lot of high school students, let's say just say MPS, who may not have the language that they want to take, or and that's a certain kind of marketing that can happen and connections. Also knowing all of the instructors at all of the system for your language, that's another way that you can easily have a listserv to send things out.
Mhm.
But I'm very excited about the high school option,
Yeah.
so that we can serve MPS and maybe
Absolutely.
MATC even.
So could we use this for the high school students or is it
Yes.
just for the UW?
Yes, they would, whatever what do they call that? The dual enrollment thing or something where the high schools pay the tuition here. They would do that and the student would enroll in Russian that's being sent here from lacrosse or whatever.
So I have a couple of questions. I'm gonna kind of, not to mean true, but I've typed them out so they're clear too for me and for you. Let me say that I think it's great. I mean, I love it when high school students come into the classroom. And I think that's a great market too. But I have two sets of questions. The first one is with regard, because I'm ignorant of this product to some extent, except what I've seen, and it looks really good. But so, just so I'm clear, so is it true to say, one, that InSpace is targeted for language learning online, but not online and in-person mixed as such? Could you, if you could just a short answer to that now, my second question.
Okay, so we have, and I'm gonna go back to Shelley because she was the one that was spoken about before.
Sure.
German at La Crosse. She has right now a course where she 2 days has the classroom to classroom connection. And 1 day, all of the students meet on InSpace. So she's combined them in that way.
So let me try this again. Is InSpace made so that I can have a class with some people who are physically in the classroom at the same time as other people? Okay, that's the first question. It's not a critique. It just helps me to know what this product is. Okay.
Technologically, that would be a disaster.
Second question. Okay, that's important to know because these all have price points. And now I don't want to leave Zoom. I would like to have both now. That's my own opinion. Secondly, any courses with either only in-person or in-person and online then is not a target that of InSpace. That's clear to me. Okay, the second question I have is, and this is a practical one, because in some respect, we are all in competition for the students. And I just want to say that. We all believe, I think, our language is the best one. And although it's true, I push people into other languages after they've taken mine. If someone actually asked me to be honest, would I like a student to take my language or another language? I'll just be honest. I want them to take my language. Now, maybe you're different than that. But I think that's what gives us pride in teaching. We want to just do the best job we can. So do other campuses want to have this sort of competition? If another campus has Spanish but has no French, will they push French on our campus when they know they'll be losing financial resources to keep their instructors employed? It's a very practical question. Could you speak to that one? Maybe you have already. And I hope it's not a mundane and
no.
Yeah.
It's the question I would say I've most commonly got in the last 20+ years. It's the most common question because people are afraid of this sort of competition.
I'm afraid for my instructors in my department, not for me. I'm really afraid for loss of budget and revenue.
So what we have found is a couple of things. First off, the student who chooses to take Japanese is not the same student who would take Spanish necessarily. So they're choosing to take a particular language for a specific reason. I don't know if you survey your students to see why they've chosen your language.
I do every semester.
Right. So you're not actually in competition from language to language because typically it's not the same person that wants both of those languages unless they happen to be getting a degree in languages. And then we have seen students taking multiple ones.
Now, I'm going to be selfish here for a moment.
Sure.
If you came to me and you said, here's an orange, an apple, and a pear, you can choose from these three. And I only have the choice between three because that's all I'm aware of. And you're an orange, apple, and salesman, let's say. And there's a salesman down the road that sells, I don't know, clementines. Well, if I as a purchaser don't have access to the clementines very easily, then I'm going to, of course, choose an apple or a pear. It might not be my first choice, but after I take the course, I realize, wow, this is wonderful. I didn't realize Spanish was so great, or German and so on. So in a way, again, and I'm not speaking as an instructor, I'm speaking as a chair that wants to keep people employed. I'll just be totally honest here. Since all the languages, I think we could objectively say are good, I'm just wondering what sort of data there is on the effects of this for maybe, if I can put it in a jaundiced way, hurting small language programs on a campus. You know, maybe like Waukesha only had, I think, Spanish or French. They only had like one language. And, you know, if you took students out of that area, I'm wondering if that wouldn't hurt their bottom line. And I know I'm supposed to be just thinking whatever students want in the whole world. But I'm just thinking as, what is it, a protective chair for the budget of my department. And thinking at smaller colleges that are already in jeopardy because of the lack of students, I'm trying to understand how they would want to bring in competition for the couple of languages they have, and I'm not putting that together. Could you help put that together for me?
Okay, so there's a couple things floating through what you said. I don't know if you're aware, but Arabic is taught at Whitewater. It started at Whitewater because of CLP, and they now have a tenure track instructor. So in Whitewater, Wisconsin, somehow they managed to get a tenure track instructor in place because of the numbers that they were getting for their Arabic program. This was pre-pandemic. Okay, now all of the languages are struggling to come back to pre-pandemic levels. I get that.
Yes, yeah, right.
So there's that piece of it. We've grown programs where they didn't exist before. That's
Okay.
one thing that I want to say. And this idea that I sort of suggested of having multiple sections of the same course, or in some cases, one of the things that we see is for not the less commonly taught languages, but the languages that are offered in high school, or in this case, if they did a college credit in high school thing, when they come to us, and let's say they are really at a second semester level, and it's the fall semester, and they have to wait a whole semester to get it. By the time they get to spring, they're like, I'm over the language thing. I've already moved on. So if we can offer, say, first and second semester in the fall, we won't lose those people. And then we follow that up with third and fourth semester in the spring, as well as first and second, or whatever, whatever combination of those. We're actually supporting each other and growing programs that don't currently exist. So we're not putting people out of business. We're trying to bring in the business by offering the options that can be offered because we're working collaboratively as a larger group, as opposed to everybody just fighting for their own place.
So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Laura, I have a question. I know that Stevens Point dismissed their Chinese instructor, but their program, the students still taking Chinese course through CLP. So how does that work? If say the Chinese students at Stevens Point are taking first 2 semesters, but third, fourth semester from UWM, would that be possible?
Yes.
So they will be paying us?
No, they would still be paying Stevens Point.
So you wouldn't get any of that.
So you don't get the tuition dollars, you just get the enrollment.
Oh,
So what is the administration support on this program? So, and maybe this is like if Rochester wants to do this,
right?
If we have the support from UWM,
so
try out, because I wouldn't even mind teaching an overload to have an extra section of this to give it a try, or to teach like 102 in the fall,
right?
To bring students in, but
so,
if you don't have the support, then all this is lovely, but
right,
it won't.
So that's one of the big reasons that I'm here is I need to find out what are the challenges that you all have that you need to solve, and then figure out in what way CLP can help support that. And that's where I then go to Jason and the other deans and say, these are the problems that we have. Here's some possible solutions. Can we do this? Does it work for you? Okay, so I like the segue. I appreciate the segue, and I'd like to move away from talking about the specifics of technology, because that's something that would happen down the road once there's already buy-in to being part of this. And just just know that we are here. CLP is here to support any trainings you need and any of that kind of stuff that you need. And as far as physical dollars are concerned, those are conversations that I have with the deans. Right. So I don't want you to spend a lot of time worrying about the finances of it.
All we've been worrying about, honestly. I mean, that's like the #1 worry, at least for Russians.
Yes and no, right? Yeah. Because if we come up with a financial model that works for your campus, then you only need to worry about the classes that you're teaching. And so
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah,
goal.
that's my concern right there. So this is a question I would need answered before I could, like, I like the, by the way, the program, this software is excellent. So, but this whole question of no tuition dollars, but enrollment, that's just a red flag. So I think, not to put I don't know if we're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, I might be interested, but I don't want for my courses to have the dean's office do their due diligence and say, well, there's no money there. We need to support we have a budget, whether it's a department budget or LNS budget. And this is my, if there's no sharing of the, whoever, generally at UW and the way it has worked in the past, although there's some fluidity in this, which I've always questioned, the idea that if you provide the instructor, you should therefore receive the credit was always the rule that was used here. So I'm hearing that I provide the instructor, I provide the course, but now I don't get the money back. So I think that is maybe for me the elephant in the room. If wouldn't an agreement have to be reached first to then make this palatable, because for responsible fiscal management is what I'm asking about. Joey, because I think that is central here to that part of the equation. What do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, Lauren, Jason and I and a few others of us have had some discussions about this. Really, so I sent Jason a sort of scenario that I think kind of explains it, maybe in a nuts and bolts way. Basically, let's say we have a 4th semester French class that isn't filling up one semester. But we know we could get students from another campus that could make it a worthwhile endeavor. So we offer it that semester. We only get the tuition dollars for the students that sign up here. But the following semester, that campus beams us a class that we can only muster 6 or 7 students for, but they can get more. But we don't have to supply an instructor, so it evens out. That's the point. That's the idea.
Correct.
So that, in other words, we're helping students get through a program because they're being offered courses that they need to get through the program or to get their language requirement or whatever it is. And at the same time, we're reducing costs because sometimes we have to pay an instructor, sometimes we don't. But in the aggregate, both sides are getting the tuition dollars. So in a sense, if I have right now two or four classes over the course of the year that each have 6 students in them, but only one of them has to pay for has to have an instructor pay for, that's a savings.
That's right.
That's
So to give you a real number, last semester, Stevens Point had 57 students that received language. That's 57 students worth of tuition that they could put to help support some of their lower enrolled other language courses that didn't cost them any instructor dollars. Okay, so that's how it balances it out.
Well, and
Nita.
I just want to go back to something that I thought that I didn't quite finish. There's also gains, not just,
Right.
not just, because if, let's say the student at NPS that doesn't have an option to do Russian, but really wants to do Russian, takes a course with Russian through UWM, it's much more likely they'll come to this campus to follow up, right, and after a good experience. So then you're getting in enrollments, and this is something hard to track, but I will go back to pre-pandemic, the time in the elevator, that one, exciting time when I was with, I think it was a dean, or it was maybe the provost actually, in an elevator and says, oh, by the way, we ran the numbers and we found out that French brings in more high school students from MPS than any other language in this thing, because we had that French day and we had very strong outreach at that time. It was the one time I ever got a shout out for that. And but we don't know we can't track those numbers, but it's really something that we should think about, because those 3 students from MPS or those 2 students from NATC or whatever, that adds up. And then that's a very clear thing that might pull them into this campus, given that we do have so many languages.
Right, and I'll give you a couple examples. We had a facilitator in Japanese who later decided, and this was not why she came over here to come to college, but she decided to become a Japanese instructor because of her experience as a facilitator. There's a she's a young woman now. She's actually my niece who grew up in Shorewood, right outside of Milwaukee here, took French in high school, went to college at River Falls because she could take her horse there. She happened to take a Japanese class, fell in love with the Japanese class, ended up transferring to Madison, completed a degree in Japanese and international relations, and I think French also. And she ended up living in Japan, teaching English for a while. She came back here, had a government job working for exchange programs. Now she's living in France, still working for a Japanese exchange program. So these students we see them suddenly get engaged, doesn't matter where their course is. And you're right, they do transfer. So you may get students in Milwaukee simply because you have a degree program that they can complete here that right now is no longer available at some of the smaller rural campuses that couldn't sustain it. So all of these kinds of things happen.
And enrollment numbers are enrollment numbers. So let's say we have a second section that normally would have 2, but we have all these students from other campuses and it brings it up to 12. Then the university wouldn't cancel that second section because there's 12 people. Correct, even if we don't have the income, or how would that work? You know, like.
Yeah, no, I'll just get back to your original question,
Yeah.
kind of, like, where am I on all this, where are we on all this? I think we're interested, so I'm here, I'm talking to Lauren, probably more than Lauren wishes.
No,
Really
great.
interested in the in-space demonstrations, I also think that's big improvement on Zoom. I think the revenue stuff is the question we have to answer, so, yeah, if it's only a case of one class and you get 10 students in there who aren't paying a penny, it doesn't do anything, right? Like, it has to be reciprocal. There have to be classes where we are still sending and classes where we're receiving, and that's gonna have to balance out in some ways. It's easier for me to think of cases on our campus where we have excess instructor capacity and thus room to take students from someone else, right? There are some places where I can think of, where we might actually want to use them. So that Aragorn left, Japanese has been hit pretty hard by some departures and retirements. And, that's a place where it looks to me like maybe their numbers are down because they actually can't offer what they used to offer, right? Like, so maybe there's a really good case where first year Japanese, we add a few more sections to the schedule, but they're out at wherever, Stevens Point or wherever, so it seems like you have the curriculum set up already. And then the benefit, so then our students take those classes there, but they're paying us tuition. I'm happy because I don't have to pay an instructor for those extra dozen students. And then down the road, we've got that many more people interested in Japanese, and then let's hope their 4th year Japanese classes don't have 5 people in them, but maybe they have 15 people, right? So for me, that's, I am looking for scenarios like that, right, where it makes sense, and if you can help me do that in your areas, right?
And it doesn't have to be you send a Japanese, you receive a Japanese. It could be you send a Japanese, you receive an Arabic, or, it doesn't have to be the same language. It can be wherever it makes sense.
So you'll be the matchmaker then? For
Yes.
us? Or we go out to talk to
No.
people? No?
I take care of that.
And what I'll be looking at, right, from my desk is how many students are coming, sitting in our classes for free versus how many students total are paying tuition and getting classes somewhere else with no instructor overhead, right? And if those two kind of balance out, right?
That's right, that's a win.
Then
It's a
we're
win,
probably at least at break even.
Right.
So,
But would it be okay to have it be over the year as opposed to a semester?
oh yeah, it would have to, there's good.
Yeah,
of course, yeah.
It's kind of, I think is we need a little bit of insurance in order to
How do you
try-
begin?
experiment.
Right.
It's experimentation in a sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Conceivable, it could be more than a year.
Yeah.
Period. Right, we might have to look at 2-year periods.
And it may take a little bit to get going for the students to even know that it's out there as a possibility.
One thing I wanted to bring up that one of my big dreams or hopes is that because of better technology, And this, and really good models of other things that we may have students actually progressing a little bit faster in terms of proficiency, which is exactly what we need for those third year classes, and then the third year classes, you know, have that up to the fourth year. This is what I'm really thinking underneath it. That's really the big win, that we can, and first of all, serve our students better so that they can go faster, but then we do have this momentum up into the third and fourth year. That of course is not gonna happen next fall, but I think if we're trending in that way, will that be, can we make a case for that, and will that be seen by Ed?
Well, and also would this help Madison? Because I know that like UW-Madison has a flagship program and they always need students that are doing really well. And so we could provide them with better Russian students for their flagship program, which would help the whole University of Wisconsin system as a whole. I mean, would that be?
It could.
possibility?
It totally could. I mean, Madison doesn't participate in the CLP for a number of reasons. They did at the very beginning. But that doesn't mean that the students that take our Russian classes don't end up in Madison
Well,
at
we
some
do,
point,
we lose
right?
two
We know,
every single
right,
year.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or if we need a facilitator and they have an upper level Russian student and we can't find one locally or whatever. So that's the other thing about when you move to this platform, it doesn't matter where the facilitator is. They don't have to be physically on your campus because you're receiving that course. They could be anywhere, right? Yes.
So I'm sorry because I had another meeting and I arrived later at this one. I'm sorry for that. So I am Susana, a Portuguese instructor here at WM, and my question is focused on Portuguese. So I am teaching high flex classes online and in person at the same time at this wonderful room. And my question is, it's possible Portuguese to be part of this, let's say, community. Also, I'd like to share with you that before a few semesters before, I have been contacted by students from La Crosse and other campuses. Sometimes they were able to join Portuguese classes. Sometimes it was not possible because one, bureaucracy, two, money. So
yes. So that
what is possible?
Yeah. So the bureaucracy part has often happened when you've got a student at a different campus that somehow needs to be a special student at your campus in order to take your course. And then it doesn't get counted in their financial aid and all kinds of craziness. So that's one of the things that CLP is trying to fix by this home institution model where they pay tuition on their home campus. And then all that needs to happen is that course needs to show up for them to register for it in their class search. Okay, so as long as we have a campus that is willing to list a Portuguese class, you could get students from the other campuses. So that's kind of how it works. So it's just a matter, and one of the questions that we have on our survey, which we run mid-semester, every semester for all of our CLP students. So if you get involved, this would be something you'd have. One of the questions on there is, why did you take the language that you're taking? And if that one wasn't offered, what other language would you like to take? It doesn't have to be one that's currently available on your campus, so that we can gauge what students would like to be taking. And so far, the one that I think has come up the most is probably people taking Mandarin because Korean's not offered. That's the biggest one I've seen.
This is a good thing. I put my hand up, so I'll just break in because I know you can't see these hands. I have a couple questions. Well, first of all, oh, this is interesting. So Madison is not participating in CLP. So in a way, if it's sort of a club or society that people are investing time in, then that immediately makes me think, well, then I don't have to consider competition from the Madison program. And I would owe more allegiance to people who are part of the program in working with them. So in a way, that's good news because Madison could be the monster that swallows things. And so I actually think that's really good news. It makes me much more favorable toward the CLP now. My second thing is, whom should a program email to see if a language course might be of interest to another campus? That's my first question. And secondly, are there dates to consider? You know, like youth options of any type. There are certain dates for next year. You've got to get it in by this date. So if you could maybe speak to those 2 points, whom should, you know, anybody in my department email? And it would be nice if that was put in the chat, or if you could send me a note personally so that I'd know who to point them to. And secondly, if there are particular dates, if we want to be involved in this, are there dates we need to keep in mind? So I'll take those 2 questions off, comments off the air.
Okay, so I just put my email address in there. I'm the one that, and I'll put it up on the board here, or Mingyu knows how to reach me.
And I didn't hear your name at the beginning. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm Lauren Rosen.
Lauren, okay. Not Lori, but Lauren, okay.
Lauren, yeah. So I would be the person that you would email if you have a course that you would be interested in sharing. Before I would put it out there, Jason and I need to get on the same page that you guys are ready to explore this. And see where it goes. So that as far as who to contact, it would be me. And I'm going to say that I'm also the contact for wanting to hear more from you. So if after today you leave here and there's a challenge in the back of your head that you didn't think of that is still sitting there, please email me and let me know what those challenges are, because CLP exists to help you. And if we don't know what your challenges are, we can't do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I have a language course that has 5 extra seats and they're not going to be filled anyway, because I offer so many sections, don't get paid more for them, but I just am trying to get as many people as I can interested in my language because I enjoy it, then, you know, I can see that as perhaps in the future providing more students for other levels of the language. But I must say I'm a little... it's probably too much work to do, but it would, to my mind, it would make more sense to have a sort of a prorated payment. In other words, whoever does the work gets that part of the money from the other campus, but.
So let's not get into the dregs of the financial model.
Gotcha,
Because
sure.
that's something that I work with the deans on, and we do have a sort of.
Sure, well, I guess
I'm
I'm not getting into the dregs. I'm just asking, making
just,
suggestions.
yeah, just trust me
making-
that
if I
the
could just-
financial model is something that we.
Sure, well, I'm
very
putting it
seriously
on
work
record
with
here.
and-
Yeah,
If we can do that, Andrew, we would do that.
yeah, I just wanted to put on record my own suggestion.
Yeah,
Since I won't be part of those meetings, I'll simply say that if there's any way that those that do the work get the money, that way it works both ways each time. But I don't know the amount of work that would go into that each semester. So I just want to make that comment. It's just a comment or recommendation.
and I'll leave that to your campus decisions. Go ahead.
I just
Jason.
wanted to add from the earlier part of the conversation that, you know, if this will have to be something coordinated through LNS, so. Lauren is very responsive and eager to hear, but we will have to kind of work with the dean's office to make sure this can go in a kind of coordinated way. I'm kind of eager to pilot this in a small scale way, and as we get back in, we're gonna have to figure out how that works and how that makes sense, and you know, we'll kind of go from there.
As far as timing goes, because that was the other question we got, so most campuses have already put out or put together their fall course listings, but students aren't registering just yet. So if there's a course to be added for next fall, it's not too late now. Normally, I try and get that information around December-ish. So by January, February, we figured out which campuses are offering which languages. So that's my typical timeline for that. Anita.
Just going back to the thing that I'm curious about, the language facilitators, is there potential, because we're trying to do more paid internships on campus, would it be possible to use students on campus to apply for those?
Yeah, most of these jobs are student positions. We have also had some Fulbrights Stevens Point likes to get Fulbrights. We've had work study students. So whoever, whatever person you want, and if you're in a fully online environment, it doesn't matter which campus they're on. So let's say there were a French course even between La Crosse and Stevens Point, but you had somebody here that would be a great facilitator. That could still work out. They would get employed here. We have up to $1,000 that we would pay for that employment. And we just pay it to your campus.
Yeah, because it's really good.
Right.
Experience and it's, they get
100%.
good internship credit, plus they can get paid. That would be great, yeah.
Mhm.
And also these students of ours, those are the students we have that are doing multiple languages that are really good. And then seeing the facilitator being somebody like you is also very aspirational for the students taking the classes. And so that would be really nice.
Right.
I just have a question about, so a course, for example, German 101 would have to be the same one, no matter who teaches it, right? So that it's easy to transfer and move on through the sequence.
We're trying to align them, yes. So,
Okay.
so the goal would be to, match, and we're not gonna tell you how you need to teach it.
Right.
But, that the
Certain goals
same
and-
structures are taught.
Same textbook and.
To the extent
Ideally, yeah.
possible,
Okay.
yeah, the same text, though, I'm hoping that especially as proficiency oriented as we're moving towards, that it's not, we're gonna do exercise A and then B and then C anyway, so.
Right.
From that perspective, the textbook isn't the curriculum.
Yeah.
But
But the
is there-
textbook, you don't want students to have to buy one textbook one semester.
well,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
Textbook
yeah,
for a different
that's
semester
exactly what
and
we're
all
getting
that.
away from, yeah, so we our less commonly taught are already aligned with the same text, and the French and German groups were working on OER and things like that to align them, and we're looking at the German text that you guys have adopted here as sort of a basis for the other German courses.
And are there campuses, I'm sorry, that have, for example, our German 101 is 4 credits, German 102 is 4 credits, German 203 is 3 credits. Does that match or does that?
It matches
be
some and not
adjusted?
others.
Okay.
One of the things that, so I know, for example, and we're gonna go back to Shelley Hay because she's been with us for a long time and done this, but La Crosse, I think it's 3 credits, and at Stevens Point, it was 4 credits. So she created this thing that takes no work on her end of the Stevens Point students as they get in their own groups of students and they watch a Netflix show together. And they just have to submit like a summary
Okay.
so that, of what happened every, or something like,
Yeah.
something
So
simple
that's the
like that to
4th
sort of make up for the 4th credit that
Okay, okay.
Stevens Point was supposed to get.
Yeah.
Because it's 4 credits and hers is 3. So we've done some funky things like that.
Okay.
We also play a little bit with the time slots. So not shockingly, every campus that's part of a system that's completely unsystematic has different time schedules, has different break schedules, all of those kinds of things. So as far as time slots go for synchronous sessions, I will look at whatever campuses are sharing a course. And if I see that there's like, say, a 10-minute passing time, and if I shift the start time 5 minutes, it is in the middle of passing time for one so that the other one can participate. We would talk about whether or not that was okay. So that way students don't have to not take 2 classes in order to take a language. So we watch for things like that. We also have a number of different scenarios that have helped where spring breaks are different and, things like that. But we've been doing this for 26 years. So we got ideas.
Yeah.
We're not going to leave you hanging and say, oh, good luck to you. We've had scenarios where there have been 3 campuses involved or 4 campuses involved, and there's 3 different spring breaks, but there are ways to handle that. And especially with the technologies that we have, it makes it much easier. You will still take your spring break when your campus takes your spring break. So we 100%, everybody needs their time off. So don't worry about that either. Yeah.
Yes. No, I know that. What I'm kind of thinking about is that, you know, the way this model really works best is at an economy of scale, right? Like, the more buy-in we have both internally at UWS, that's the greater the pool of both sending and receiving, but also the greater the buy-in is from outside UWM, the more, you know, room we have to even out at the end.
Mhm.
So I guess, right, we're moving from a model of one-to-one, like Larry, your example is perfect, like we have a course that maybe it's a little bit off the one world, they have a course. But really, is that the model though, that we're like a partnership? We're like, how do you talk about playing matchmaker? Are you, is it still match, or is it more like polyamorous now, like that?
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm sorry.
That is a perfect example. But that's the shift we're going through right now. It used to be one-to-one, and now we're trying to shift to this sort of polyamorous model because we have the technology to support it.
But that's, I know, I couldn't stop it.
I'm gonna probably use that again, so I appreciate it.
Lots of buy-in, but that's kind of the exciting part, right? So, but also like here, like, I know we're talking about.
And you won't get fired for it either.
Starting. I'm losing that now. We're talking about kind of starting small, but like, it also depends on, like, let's say French, like, we're gonna do this. And then German says, I'm not really sure about this. That, it doesn't necessarily doom us to not be successful here, but I think the more we can work as a group of languages. That's a super controversial statement here, but the more we can do that, the more chance we have of succeeding. But it's also not just dependent on us, it's also dependent on multiple universities across the system saying, yeah, we want to import, you know, a bunch of courses from UWM, because there is, you know, I do think, right, but because that's where, you know, your history of we've grown programs, but it's also been on this program, this university wants this language and that one has it, and then maybe the complexity sort of changes things a bit. I don't necessarily think that's anything other than to say that buy-in from other universities of the multiple languages is as important as that buy-in of collaboration at UWM. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you have this sense of like, the university I know I spoke with French and German. I think there's definitely from German, this is the concrete relationships that I have. They seem interested, but if we come out and say UWM wants to export like 5 courses, they also need to import them, right? They can't just say, no, we're good this year, because then that model kind of breaks down.
Yep.
So I don't, this is not so much a question as that's what I'm thinking about.
Right, and I think that's where I really want to encourage all of you to think a little bit outside of the box in the sense of don't think about, I teach this. And I'm the one that teaches this, and so I'm the only one that can teach this. But rather, how can we work together to offer, even if it's the same thing, offer the same thing more often so more students have an opportunity to enroll.
Lorna, would it make sense, just kind of based on what Jonathan was saying, would it make sense for us to first, like on this side, in the UWM situation, people who are interested get together and maybe even map out, oh, this semester I could have used, like get a sort of a list of what we would be interested in receiving and a list of what, because as you said, it could be you send a French, you receive a German, you send a French or an Arabic, you receive a Russian or whatever. But that, I think that's the complexity in-house that maybe we need to grapple with even before we talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, the park side always wanted our, Italian, you know, and then we worked with them before and then they were very responsive. But the logistics of registering and all that.
It was a mess.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do non-language courses fit into this? Because honestly, you can say that language courses are the same everywhere, more or less.
Okay,
Not non-language courses. There is an advantage here. How
Right.
can you package so that it's,
right.
it's a better deal for me in Arabic, because I can offer really kick-ass courses, non-language, and I want to. How does it work to help this model, help this?
So, here's an example that here's an example we're working on right now. Magana Maeda, Japanese instructor at River Falls. She has plenty of students in her first year course. She has plenty of students in her third semester course. By the time she gets to fourth semester, there are 2 sections, but really the number of students could fit into one. So what we're looking at is combining that into one section. She's going to design a course that, I don't know what it'll be, culturally related or, anime, I don't know what, that will be taught in English to engage students in the idea of Japanese language and culture, in hopes that maybe some of them will then start taking the language. So that's where the non-language courses might fit in, is in a, it doesn't make them ineligible. It's just thinking about it strategically as an avenue to help bring more students into our languages. The catch with that I could see on this campus, and you guys would have to decide, is would that course be so heavily enrolled locally that you wouldn't have the space for our students from other campuses? That I don't know.
So sections are not a solution to that?
What's that?
Sections are not the solution to that?
They can be, they certainly can be. I know, for example, you teach Arabic, right? Do I remember that right? So Hala, who's at Whitewater, I know she teaches a World of Ideas class. And I think at Whitewater have like 6 sections of it in a semester with different people teaching it. It's certainly a possibility that they could offer a World of Ideas here by her. And then maybe you have something else that could go, so it would work from a physical standpoint in the same way. You just have to think about, is it going to be so over enrolled locally that you wouldn't be able to afford to add students? Or do you purposefully want to cap the numbers here? And then it also becomes a question with a class like that, how many students, are we still at the 25 students only? Or do we make that a bigger number in general, and maybe you cap it here at 20 and you allow another 10 from elsewhere or something? I'm making it up out of my head.
But can I just weigh in on that, right?
Yeah.
If you have a 40-person course, and we would normally mostly fill that, and now we have 20 people in there from CLP who aren't paying us a penny, right?
That's
God's
probably-
gonna lose his mind.
Right,
Like we,
right.
that's not a winning proposition for us, right? So the attractive courses for us are the ones where there's a fair amount of capacity, too many empty seats. Teaching the class anyway, right? A class that maybe it's at 15 or so, and we're gonna teach that anyway. It's too big to cut, but there's 5 to 10 more seats, right? Well, okay, right? As long as we have those other courses
That are coming in.
where our students are paying us to take them somewhere else.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's figuring out what those are. I love this idea of people kind of sorting out whoever said, I think, let's map some stuff out. We could just start to make, some lists where, and that's gonna be the harder list.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of instructors and we're losing students faster than we're losing
Right.
instructors.
Right.
So,
This one, I'm sorry, what you
Oh, I just actually was wondering, is there a catalog of what's currently being offered, with like the courses, the course descriptions, who's offering it and instructor?
So I have a list on our website. Okay, I'll just pull it up for a minute here. Let's see.
So I think for orientation, that might be.
Just to give you an idea.
Look at what's already there and.
So we're uwclp.org. I can also get it to, you can get it out to you guys. And it doesn't give the course descriptions, but it does show who's sending what to whom
Okay.
at this point.
And this is the old model, one-to-one sending. See.
For the most part, because I'm going to show you next year's calendar, and we do have an instance, UW Stout is going, so they had been on this one-to-one thing, and they offered French and we're receiving German, but only the first year, and they want to try and get, they want to try and grow it beyond first year courses. So if I go to courses offered. So
It doesn't say the credit.
this is
Oh, I guess-
where it describes what the medium is for the course. And then you've got your send site and your receive site, and this is for next fall or
Okay.
next year. And you'll see, where am I?
Oh, they do, yeah.
So Stout is going to try and go for a 300 level German class. And they're also gonna try and go for a second year French class. They don't know if they'll get students. The only language that they have on their campus locally is Spanish. So everything else that they've offered through CLP.
And how many German instructors would be at Stout or Green Bay? You know?
Yeah, Stout has none. Green Bay has one tenure track and, oh no, 2 tenure tracks, and I think 1 maybe adjunct. And in French right now, they have none. They have 2 adjuncts, I believe. And actually, so that's one of our most successful courses. And it's happening right now, and it's happened before. That's where I'm coming from, is this one. It's a French 4. This is actually, they're using InSpace for it, and it's the Green Bay to La Crosse to River Falls.
So I see Green Bay sending a lot. I don't see Green Bay receiving a lot. So how is the?
They are
work out?
no, they are receiving, trying to remember off the top of my head. They're receiving Arabic, and are they receiving Russian, I believe? Yep, they're receiving Arabic and Russian. So, and then they send French right now, and they last semester sent a German course. So,
Yeah, I mean, if this could, this could be a thing too, where if we could send French to places that don't have French, and then in return receive another language that here needs a course that, like in an off semester, like Arabic or something, I think that can be really useful to both. I think.
yeah,
So I just have a broad, big macro question.
Yep.
Or just comment. So you have the credentialing and you have also the exam at the end, that's an external testing, which I think is a
Yep.
really big game changer. That really is important. And it also is a good optic for the university for when you're looking at businesses and, reputation and stuff. So we had that Wisconsin roadmap. And I know that sort of seemed to fizzle away, but it was, you know about that, right? Lisa, so it was a collaboration between the languages, business community, governmental, and it was the 2019, I'm trying to think, a lot of us.
it was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, so that kind of, we can see that but, I'm really thinking that this is kind of juicy. It looks, it's fresh, it looks like really good pedagogy, and it's got that tech thing. So I'm just thinking, I feel like, we're the second biggest. So that was a little bit of a problem about the even, right, that's the thing. But, I'm thinking that this might be, we could think also about that. We also think about optics and how to market a little bit better and how to maybe go back to some of those principles in that Wisconsin roadmap document that we could kind of be part of that, of refreshing that. Because I think that's what we ultimately have to do, is make the case in the broader culture for our relevance and importance, and within the university for that. We're also having to make that case about how we are enriching and how we are really promoting employment. I mean, you're right, to be crass about it, but how languages fit into that employability and also satisfaction with university, the university degree, satisfaction with the whole process and also the outcomes. And so I just think that that might be something that we could maybe as languages go back to that document and think through it. And see if there's ways that will also give us this extra benefit that we're not counting, and we're just counting heads, you know, for the enrollments. There's just always other things that I think we're not trained for that, you know, who has a training for that, but I think we're at the point where we have to be very proactive.
And
More
the,
proactive than we ever have been, you know, we tend to be more proactive, I think, in some disciplines where we don't have to actually defend what we do in elevators and buses and waiting lines and in the United States.
so the other part of the credentialing, so there's the global seal by literacy, which any student who gets an intermediate, mid or higher on all 4 skills, we send it off, they get the global seal, and that's a digital badge. CLP has also developed a series of their own badges. So every student who takes the stamp assessment gets 4 badges, 1 for each one of the skills at whatever level they were for that specific skill. These are done in Badger. They can also go on the LinkedIn. They're also tied to the can-do statements and ACTFL standards. So even if they don't get this far, they will get this. And if they get this far, they will get this. And this is what we're finding, well, both of these is what we're finding is leading a couple of things, students to take another course that they weren't planning on because they're, you know, maybe they got intermediate mid on 3 out of 4 skills and they want that global seal, right? So they'll take another class and see if they can get there or things like that. So we're finding that that's an incentive. We're also finding that when we advertise on our campus about somebody receiving a global seal through maybe a campus-wide newsletter or whatever goes out, we have students saying, hey, can I take that test? I happen to be bilingual. And now we're reaching a whole nother community on our campuses that has been largely, that they have this great skill that's largely been ignored. And all they have to do is pay $35 to pay for the test and have somebody proctoring it. And they can come away with a global seal also. So we're meeting a need that campuses haven't even touched before. You had a question?
I'd like a quick, it's a real nuts and bolts question, but I'm sort of thinking a little bit further out now and imagining maybe doing some teaching using through the CLP. And one of the things though that I'm also thinking about is the first 4 semesters languages. So we're presuming we're going to be offering these through CLP. Let's just say we figure it out, woohoo, we all celebrate and have a party. Not all the courses that are taught in the first 4 sequence, first 4 semester sequence, will be offered through CLP, right? But when I'm offering it through CLP, I have access to different technologies that I don't have access to through a regular course. How do I do that?
Okay, so that's a very good question. I'm gonna go back to this slide. Okay, so
I know I can't.
you'll have Canvas regardless for all your classes. You will have Padlet, Extempore, and H5P access. It won't be within Canvas. No, once you have your login for these, you can use them for every single one of your classes. It just won't be integrated into your Canvas instance for those sections.
So once you,
And how do you pay for that?
Well, because we're already paying the cost of you as an.
Dollar from this lack of integration between Canvas.
So it just means you put a link in Canvas and the student goes out to it and they have to sign in again. So it's a little more cumbersome. Tell them ahead of time that that's what they're going to do, and they usually don't complain.
Okay. Okay.
So you can still use it for all of your classes once you have the login.
Yeah, I just don't want to like invest a bunch of time in developing
Right.
things and then
100%.
we'll only use it there.
Yeah, no. And in fact, the French 2nd year course that's being taught from Green Bay right now to
Yeah.
UW campuses. He also has a first-year class that's just to Green Bay, but he happens to be living in Washington State. So he's using InSpace for his first-year class too, and we're not saying anything. It's not directly integrated into the Canvas instance. He just gives them the link that they need and
Well, if you give us access to these tools, is it possible for us to contact our CEDO or campus IT for them to figure out the integration?
I think that's probably a licensing matter.
yeah, that would be a licensing issue.
It's
I
not
think.
just a technical matter, it would be, we have to pay to.
So,
that stuff.
yeah, so we have our, just like UW Milwaukee has a subnet within this bigger Canvas thing, CLP has its own subnet. And so these are integrated into my subnet, but not necessarily into the Milwaukee subnet. And Madison, by the way, has their own instance of Canvas altogether. So that makes it also difficult to coordinate with them for these shared courses because we can't actually be added or have students from our campuses added to their instance. They're their own
Well, if
specialties.
we have one more interest that we can write to
Right.
CEDO and say, hey, these are the courses that
But-
we're using these tools, can you buy it?
Another reason, like,
Work together.
Right,
the
right.
more, the better.
There's power in collaboration, for sure.
I can think of one organizational change that would help it working together. I'll mention it.
Oh,
I can guess what that one is because I've seen it happen.
there's a polyamorous club.
It's exactly-
Polyamorous club.
I've never thought of it, no.
Polyamorous.
New department.
Big opening moments there.
Well,
Sorry.
No, I think it's funny. I should have said this earlier, but if any of you wanted to sort of see what InSpace is like, I'm holding a session in InSpace from 3 to 4 today, and there's no reason why you all couldn't get in there. It's just language instructors from around the state talking about how things are going. So if that's of interest to you, I can certainly get the link out to Mingyu easily, and then she can get it to everybody who was here. If you guys want to do that, you're welcome to.
And I really like the online office. space.
Yes.
So that's where I'm meeting with Shelley. I'm so excited about it. It's like, oh, I get to go to InSpace office.
InSpace office hours.
Because
Yeah.
I looked to the library from office hours and I still can't pull those students in. So they have this cute online one and I can put up pictures and I don't know.
Right.
With some music.
It's really something, I mean, it shouldn't be, I don't think we have time for it, but I'm really always busy with understanding how the students are changing. Because really, I mean, I don't know if you have insights from all of this. but it's,
How the students are changing in terms
I mean,
of,
no, you're like opening so many doors.
right.
But very few can walk.
We try and keep it as, user-friendly and simple as possible. But we also are keeping our linguistic goals in mind. And, we are also making ourselves accountable through like the proficiency testing. That also informs us. Are our students actually getting to the proficiency level that we told them at the beginning of the semester and put in our syllabus that they would reach? And if they're not, let's figure out why not. But we haven't had a lot of students complaining about all the different technologies that we're using. And I don't know, I don't know if it's because they're just used to that and it's right in Canvas and every class does what, and you also don't need to use all of them, right? You pick one or two to start with and you get really good at those. And then when you're ready, you add in more. You don't like jump in with both feet because that would, you would not feel good about what you were doing and the students would also be struggling and notice. So you don't want to do it that way either.
But some of them are very basic
Right.
Knowledge, they're very.
Yeah, some of them you probably are already using. So those are the first ones that you integrate and then you add something to it.
Yeah, Jamboard, which is like follow along easy, I've been using that since the pandemic, and I mean, in the weekly self-eval students, I keep getting these. I really like Jamboard and collaborating, so like, and they keep saying it, so it's like, I think it's like the dullest thing now, but they still think it's
Right.
engaging, so, and, you know, unsolicited, and good. They said to be sort of open to it, and they also, you know, I having a computer in the classroom and, you know, whatever, and I relax a little bit of my releasing. But they really are on focus, they're focused, they're pretty good at like staying in the classroom and that kind of triple hybrid, whatever it is that happens. It's not so hard for them, it's harder for us. But
Yeah.
it's easier.
You can talk to Shelley about the ungrading, because talk about giving
Yes.
students autonomy.
Oh, I'm pretty much
100%.
pretty much unbelievable.
Yeah.
for first year.
And as a participant in her class, it's really interesting. Even watching my own behaviors.
Is that funny? Yeah, like psychology, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about ungrading, we're talking about AI and it's just.
Yeah.
In space. But I think that's great, that's pretty fun. I have another meeting.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll send it to Minu so she's got it and she can send it out to everybody.
I'll see if I can maybe learn some piece back when I have fun. Sure. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming and staying and
Thank you for.
don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email address is on the back of this, as is the,
And I'm totally for.
I think the CLP website should be on here somewhere. It might not be.
So, and like, yeah, no, I don't.
Are there more questions?
Well, that's the other point, and you know, so immediately after the.
Do you want to talk about what I sent you or not? You probably don't have time to-
I do, but I think I'm gonna be seeing
Yeah, that's what I
could make
figured.
heads or tails, but maybe we can call and have a call or something.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I put some time in it, but
It's
could not figure out,
very complicated.
It's not.
is that a next step thing? Is that?
Yeah, that's this polyamorous cycle, basically. That's where I want to head.
Well, that would be great.
It's now at a
Well, I mean,
position
the
of
other,
wanting to
yeah,
get
no,
back on it.
Right, sorry, something.
So UW System is planning to evaluate this program. And they were originally planning to evaluate it based on the previous model. I have a meeting with them next week because it doesn't make sense to evaluate based on the previous model. We already know that doesn't work for a lot of campuses. So they want to do an evaluation. Right now, our financial model, we start this new one and give us advice. Not the old one. And that's the one, and it was what I sent you was what I wanted to present in our.
Okay. Yeah, so let me,
But I love your feedback on it ahead of time.
well, you can help me understand it first, and then I can try. I'm very far away from, I couldn't make sense of it.
Right.
So,
Right.
it's all about it.
Right, so is it best for me to reach out to you to set that up, or do you have a person that?
Yeah, I have a person. Why don't I have her?
Have her reach out to me?
Is that okay?
Yeah, totally fine.
Or then
Yeah.
you can just do the teams or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, all right, yeah,
Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
yeah, no problem.
Conversation. Thank you.
You bet.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See you later, Jason.
Like he was saying, like, it's so worth it to go, you know. So there's a cohort that we have there regularly, and so, one of them is the language, teacher of the year, she's in touch. Yeah, I just got some.
We stopped recording.